Over the years, I've built a pretty solid reputation for reviewing some pretty awful movies and TV shows, and while I really didn't have much hope for Star Trek Starfleet Academy, after seeing the trailer for it, I had still committed to reviewing its first 2 episodes, something that I kind of regret right now because, if we're being honest, as somebody who grew up watching classic Star Trek, there's really only so many times I can watch this once iconic and beloved franchise being run into the ground by current franchise boss Alex Kurtzman, who is widely considered one of the worst executives of all time. A man who's been put in charge of a franchise that he simply doesn't understand, and he also has never bothered to learn about. Instead, Kurtzman has stated on multiple occasions that he uses Star Trek as a political platform to spread modern-day messaging, which is why the entire franchise is pretty much on life support these days. Now, in this video, I'm going to do my best to review Star Trek Starfleet Academy Episodes 1 and 2, but I have to warn you, in spite of mainstream critics giving this show amazing scores on Rotten Tomatoes, for some reason, this show is bad. Very, very bad, and I have suffered a great deal in order to bring you this review, but if you want to support me during this difficult time, please take a second now to like and subscribe, as it would really help an independent reviewer like myself.
Do it.
Starfleet Academy shamelessly starts off with the classic Star Trek theme music, but instead of hearing somebody serious like Captain Kirk delivering his official speech about space being the final frontier, we hear a goofy-sounding Holly Hunter telling us about an event that took place about 900 years after Star Trek The Next Generation, called The Burn, which destroyed a bunch of planets in the Federation, and now everybody is miserable and struggling all over the universe. Now, from what I vaguely recall, this stupid burn idea is something that they introduced in Star Trek Discovery, another embarrassing Kurtzman Trek show which was rightfully cancelled in recent years, but I guess since this is Kurtzman's only creative idea that he's ever thought of, he's introducing it here again. Then we're on a Federation outpost called Pikachu, where She-Hulk actress Tatiana Maslany tells her young son that one day they'll go to Earth, but very quickly they're arrested because Maslany is an accomplice to a crime where Paul Giamatti deleted a Starfleet officer in order to steal food or something. And then in a quick tribunal trial led by Captain Holly Hunter, she sentences both Maslany and Giamatti to prison, leaving the boy without a caretaker, which means that he will now be put in the Federation foster system. And already, right out the gate, I dislike everything that I've seen until now. In the past, Star Trek usually had a very optimistic approach, especially in new shows introducing us to new characters, but since Kurtzman doesn't know the first thing about quality writing, he automatically leans into cheap emotional gimmicks like a big tragedy event and soapy drama rather than good old-fashioned storytelling, and sadly, we're just getting started here. Caleb, the boy now in the custody of the Federation, manages to fool Holly Hunter and steal her comm badge, which somehow also doubles as a transporter, and vanish. Now normally, they would go looking for a kid that has disappeared, but since there's a sandstorm, they just figure, it. Then we jump forward 15 years, and now we see an older Caleb as a prisoner, about to be taken into a penal colony, but he manages to beat up some officers, hack into a computer system, and look for his mother, which causes the ship to crash, and for him to get rearrested. We then see Holly Hunter on Bajor teaching kids as she's visited by Admiral Vance, a character originally introduced in Star Trek Discovery, who said that he liked eating number 2, and since Holly Hunter drinks number 1 in Batman vs. Superman, I guess this scene unintentionally ends up being some type of excrement consumer reunion or something. Anyhow, the Admiral is here to tell Holly Hunter that she's the best, and that they're relaunching Starfleet Academy, and they want her to be its chancellor. Now for me this is all very strange, since Holly Hunter, from what we've seen, was a complete disgrace as a captain. After all, she was put in charge of watching a young boy who stole her equipment and ran away, disappeared, never to be found again. Why would she, of all people, be asked to be in charge of an academy filled with young cadets? Come to think of it, why would she even be watching kids at this school in Bajor? Didn't they check her references before she was hired? Well, it turns out that on this show, Holly Hunter was never held accountable for any of her mistakes. In fact, not only was she not fired after being incompetent, it was Holly Hunter herself that decided to leave Starfleet at some point on her own terms. So basically, she's kind of like the Kathleen Kennedy of the Star Trek universe, I guess. Next, the Admiral apologizes to Holly Hunter, saying that she did nothing wrong all those years ago, even though she misplaced an 8-year-old 5-year-old boy who disappeared, and in addition to being the best captain of all time, she was also right to question the Federation because they were separating children from their parents. But I have an issue with that as well. Tatiana Maslany was an accomplice to a crime that led to the death of a Starfleet officer. That's why she was arrested, and that's why she was separated from her son. It's strange how none of these people are making any logical sense, yet at the same time, they also kind of sound like people that live in our real world today, if you know what I mean. Anyhow, the poopy admiral tells Holly Hunter that they found the boy that disappeared 15 years ago, so she not only accepts the job of Starfleet Academy Chancellor that he's offered her for no reason whatsoever, she also then recruits Caleb to be a cadet at the Academy instead of doing jail time, which she completely waives because she has a good feeling about him that he's a good person. And why would she think that Caleb is a good person? Yeah, don't think about it. So now, we're on the USS Athena, which doubles as a school and a ship, where we're introduced to a bunch of irritating weirdos that have enrolled in it. And even though we're about 1,000 years into the future, they all act like ADHD Gen Z weirdos of today. In addition to Caleb, who is immediately cleaned up and given a haircut, we meet a sensitive yet timid Klingon, TikTok girl, random douche, and whatever this is. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be a hologram cadet with a Princess Leia hairdo? And why does there need to be a cadet hologram on this stupid show? Yeah, don't think about it. In terms of instructing officers, you have Cadet Master Thought, which I guess is half Klingon and half Jem'Hadar, but full-on intolerable. Then we have this rather plump, person, and the doctor from Voyager, who feels so out of place here, but I guess this show really needed a member berry, and Robert Picardo probably needed a paycheck, so they somehow made it work. And the annoying hologram cadet is of course a big fan of the legendary Doctor, so she keeps laughing at his jokes, which is super cringe. Anyhow, now that I've introduced the main characters, I'm gonna speed things up here, mainly for my own sanity. Caleb, who Holly Hunter insisted on recruiting, ends up sneaking away to hack into the ship's computer system, because he is of course the best hacker of all time. And then he sends his mother a message, even though he doesn't know where she is. And although TikTok girl catches him in the act, she's so sharp and witty that she does absolutely nothing about it, while somehow also annoying me in the process. Like, I understand that it's bad to snitch, but this guy could have potentially had bad intentions, and ignoring him secretly taking over the ship's computer seems kind of irresponsible to me. Anyhow, it turns out that due to one of the biggest conveniences in the history of the universe, Paul Giamatti has not only escaped prison, he's also intercepted Caleb's message to his mother, so he decides to attack the Starfleet Academy ship and hijack it so that he could steal its warp drive. Not only is this probably the dumbest and most random plan that any villain could ever think of, even worse, he manages to cause damage to the ship and almost pull it off. It's only due to Caleb being the best hacker of all time, again, that he manages to hack his way out of this crisis, and even though he derails Paul Giamatti's evil plan, Giamatti still escapes, and now he's on the run. Now, after an event like this, you'd think that both Caleb and the Chancellor, who waived his jail time and recruited him, would both be in hot water with the Federation, but since this is a Kurtzman Trek show, there's pretty much no consequences for their action, even when Caleb's actions caused damage to the ship and injured the people on it, who he personally endangered. So Caleb just ends up getting a slap on the wrist and a chance to continue to stay at the Academy, which makes no sense. Then the ship arrives in San Francisco, and amongst the cadets we see a Chironian girl, which is kind of odd because they all died in the original series episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, aside from 2 men. But if only 2 men were left on that planet, how is there a woman here? Yeah, don't think about it. Next we have a speech from the insufferable Chancellor telling the cadets that they should make their beds and show up to class on time. Like, they're at Starfleet Academy. They don't need to be talked to like they're 5-year-olds. Next, the Doctor lectures some cadets about a special mucus, and the hologram girl laughs at his jokes again. And once again, the very idea that there's a hologram taking a class from a hologram is so stupid, and it doesn't help that this character is also super annoying. Next, we see more lecturing from the insufferable Chancellor, intercut with a lesson where random douche tells their instructor that Caleb endangered the entire ship because he wanted to call his mommy. Now, if we're being honest, that is in fact 100% correct. Of course, the person shedding light on this is being presented as a fool, and then Caleb tells him that he has a small Johnson and gives him the finger. And that's what Star Trek has been reduced to. Stupid juvenile humor that's not even funny. Next, we see more lecturing from Holly Hunter again, where she also acknowledges the War College, which I guess is now also aboard the Starfleet Academy ship. Then we see the intolerable cadet Master Thought training cadets to be warriors or something, and one girl is so frightened that she cries and runs away. And again, this is supposed to be an establishment that takes itself seriously. I'm sure there are cadets who have fears, but in what is effectively supposed to be a more serious, almost military-like setting, this type of behavior probably would not be accepted. We then see more lecturing from Holly Hunter, saying that she wants the cadets to boldly go where no one has gone before. Just hearing her say this classic Star Trek phrase is an insult, because aside from being a cheap memberberry callback to the real Star Trek shows of the distant past, it doesn't really have any weight in this academy for such low IQ individuals. Next, Caleb is walking around trying to find his quarters to see who his roommate is, and I have to wonder, where was he sleeping until now? TikTok girl tells Caleb that he was so brave in how he handled the attack on the ship, ignoring the fact that it was his actions and her ignoring of his actions which led to the entire crisis to begin with. Of course, Caleb is now roommates with random douche, and he's unhappy about it. Next, it turns out that the Betazoids have left the Federation years ago after the burn, but are now considering rejoining, and this is where this whole episode completely goes off the rails. You see, in Star Trek The Next Generation, it's established that with the exception of Deanna Troi, who is half human and therefore empathic, Betazoids are actually telepathic with black eyes, but here they're suddenly all empathic with different eye colors. That's why at some point when they're doing sign language with a deaf Betazoid, which they don't actually need to do since they're supposed to be telepathic, we're also introduced to a Betazoid girl who obviously has light brown eyes instead of black. And for those of you thinking that these are just minor details, I wholeheartedly disagree. This is something that's part of the franchise lore, and even a quick Google search could have told you this, but Kurtzman and his writers are so lazy that they can't even be bothered to do the most minimum of research just to get these characters and species right. Like, if you're completely ignoring the events of past shows, maybe you could get away with it, but this show seems to want to have its cake and eat it too. On one hand, they take a dump on franchise lore, while at the same time desperately piggybacking off of its history in order to create these cheap member berries. Anyhow, next we have Caleb and Random Douche in the Chancellor's office arguing about not liking each other enough to be roommates. But she tells them that she can't change their room assignments and asks Caleb to stay for a chat, and then she tells him that he keeps hacking the exits of the ship because he's trying to possibly escape again, so he tells her that she promised they'd find his mother, and she's not doing enough about it. Now this is already way past anything that anybody could accept. As goofy and annoying as she is, this high-ranking officer got this loser out of jail, put him in this academy, covered for him as he endangered the ship and everybody on it, and now he's making demands from her because she hasn't yet found his mother, who's been gone for years and a fugitive from the law. I mean, how stupid can one guy be, and how stupid can one chancellor be? Anyhow, Holly Hunter then meets with the chancellor of the War College, but she decides to walk around the academy barefoot because she's so unconventional, and this is a running theme here. She's always standing awkwardly, sitting on the captain's chair like she's about to launch a giant fart, and acting like a weirdo. I cannot begin to explain to you how much this annoys me, and after being lectured to by Tig Notaro, Caleb accidentally gets covered in mucus, and he gets very upset about that. And you know, I really don't understand the appeal with Tig Notaro, or why they had to import this, person from Kurtzman's other failing show, Star Trek Discovery. It really doesn't help the show in any way, so maybe we could just stop this charade at some point. Caleb, who's on the fence about running away from the academy, then literally climbs the fence and contemplates if to leave. And if that visualization of a metaphor wasn't clear enough for viewers, a Betazoid girl then catches him in the act and tells him that she sees that he's on the fence about leaving the academy. Yes, this is the level of writing on this show. Anyhow, Caleb thinks the girl is hot, so he gets off the fence, which may very well be the only action that this character has taken until now that at least somewhat makes sense, but don't get too excited because things are about to get really dumb. Over the course of the episode, while the entire Betazoid delegation arrives to contemplate rejoining the Federation, Caleb develops a good rapport with a Betazoid girl, who also conveniently happens to be the president's daughter, so the Chancellor tells him that he should spend time with her and show her how great the Federation is. I mean, this guy keeps trying to leave the Federation and he hates it. Why would he be the one that shows her that? Anyhow, Caleb agrees to do so, but only if he can gain access to a stellar lab where he can search for his mother. Again! So the Chancellor agrees, rewarding him for his poor behavior. Again! Then Caleb takes the President's daughter to that lab where he searches for the planet where he thinks his mother is located, but since he has limited access, the Betazoid girl shows him that she can access more planets than he can because she's the best, and as a result, he seemingly locates the planet that he was looking for. At the same time, throughout the episode, we see the President negotiating the return of Betazoid to the Federation in front of students, which is kind of odd because this is exactly the type of negotiation you'd more likely see behind closed doors, and the President has all these demands that can't be met anyways. Meanwhile, Caleb seems to be enjoying his time with Betazoid girl, who he almost kisses, when he's suddenly interrupted by her father, who's very upset. The next day at a cocktail party, the Betazoid girl wears something a bit revealing, which admittedly is maybe the only thing I didn't mind about this awful show until now. Of course, this brief moment of goodwill for me is immediately destroyed with both her and Caleb acting like retards for no apparent reason. Then she reveals to Caleb that she has an inhibitor that keeps her from feeling too many emotions because she's too powerful or something. Then her and Caleb have an argument because he didn't tell her enough about his personal life, and the President is also annoyed at the Federation and wants to terminate all negotiations. And all of this is happening while the Doctor is singing opera. Please don't ask me to elaborate on that, we just need to get through this. After some pep talk from the Chancellor, Caleb convinces Betazoid girl to bring her father back to the negotiations, where he's told the Federation will build their government on his planet and invest in it, and why would this cause him to change his mind? Who the knows. Then the Chancellor tells Caleb that his mother already left the planet he thought that she was on, but they'll continue to search for her. Obviously, this missing mother thing is going to be an ongoing J.J. Abrams-inspired mystery box, which I'm sure they'll keep teasing every episode throughout this season for the 3 people that are actually watching this crap. Star Trek used to feature serious people acting professionally, especially captains. Even if, let's say, these young cadets on the ship seem to be, mentally challenged, the officers in charge have to look and act official and be taken seriously, but there's no way anybody can take this crew seriously, and that's already a major issue. And between the silly, upbeat music they keep shoving into every scene, and constant, unnecessary camera movement, this show feels more like a Jaguar commercial instead of actual Star Trek, which is never a good thing, and that includes the ship's interior, which looks something like a Romanian nightclub. And when it comes to the writing, while having a species considering rejoining the Federation, or even pirates attacking a Starfleet ship, could have worked in some capacity, the execution here is so awful that these ideas are never really brought to life. Anything this show tries to accomplish has already been done on classic Trek 100 times better than this show, and this one looks like it was written by incompetent 10-year-olds, at best. And although I don't think she's a bad actress for certain roles, Holly Hunter is 100% wrong for this specific show. Yes, she's usually good at playing quirky, offbeat characters, but the Chancellor here should have been portrayed by the type of actor or actress that dominates every scene with real gravitas and a much more commanding presence, especially versus these type of loser cadets. In addition, for the other main crew roles, in the past Star Trek would usually cast higher quality actors and actresses which were also much more appealing. Instead, on this show, it's just some strange celebration of mediocrity, both physically and acting-wise, and that's if I'm being super generous. Also, I feel like there aren't enough male characters on this show, and even when they're on screen, they seem weak and insignificant. Like, this show doesn't seem to have the least bit amount of testosterone. It feels like it was made for little Gen Z girls or something, but they're never gonna watch this crap, so what was the point of even making it? Alex Kurtzman recently said that his son and other kids his age are the target audience for this show, but you know what? After so many failures with this franchise, does Kurtzman really deserve the chance to make a silly Star Trek vanity project? Again? At what point does somebody just acknowledge how bad this guy is at his job? And one of the things that really baffled me while watching this garbage is that Paramount, over the past year, have been making multi-billion-dollar offers to try and buy other studios because of their IPs and catalogs, yet they can't seem to find a way to utilize one of their biggest franchises that they own. I mean, if you have so many billions to work with, just pay Kurtzman something to leave and be done with him. Like, how many billions is Paramount going to continue to give Kurtzman to make a mockery of this franchise when they surely could have found a way to part ways with him already? And it's not like the viewership numbers are high or anything. In fact, they're a complete disaster, much like with all of Kurtzman Trek. I could keep ranting about this for an hour and talk about how badly the Star Trek franchise has fallen, but honestly, I'm just kind of tired of all this. So it's probably best if I stop talking about it, but if you want to support me after I've suffered through watching this terrible show, please consider liking and subscribing, as it would really mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day!
I'm such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.